I made an album using a Tascam Portastudio and I wanted to dispel some of the myths about it. My name is Leo Cookman. I've been a recording and performing musician for about 20 years, so I've got a lot of experience. I've made about 10 albums of my own, as well as working on recordings with other people and stuff. But more relevant to this video, I'm also a writer. I'm a writer and researcher for a couple of different YouTube channels, and I've made some video essays you may have seen. I've also had a book published, a few articles, some poetry, things like that. And I try and keep the writing separate. That's on a separate channel usually. I have a channel called Bathed in Milk where my video essays go, and I try and keep that different from my music channel. But I thought I'd do something different for the music channel today because I wanted to talk specifically about the way I recorded my most recent album, After the Harvest, which was on a Tascam Portastudio. Now, for some reason, there's been quite a bit of movement in the Tascam Portastudio audio debate at the moment. McG is a producer who's notably using Portastudios for his guitar sound, which prompted JHS, Josh Scott, to make a pedal using a Tascam Portastudio DI input, like a preamp. And it's kind of, there's a lot of snake oil going on. And having made now a couple of records using a Portastudio, I feel better placed than some to talk about this, especially as newer people come to Portastudios. I have a bit more history. So, the context. My brother's Tascam Portastudio he bought sometime in the 90s, I think, and stopped using it really, so I nicked it, borrowed it, probably more charitable way of putting it. I borrowed it, and in the early 2000s I started recording demos with it. Some of those demos are available on SoundCloud if you want to hear them, want to hear what they're like. But they were just demos, me practicing recording. Now, this is in the days before the world and his wife had a digital input. Not everyone had enough equipment or enough money, frankly, to make their own home studio. I certainly didn't, but it required a lot more outlay as far as money goes to make a home studio at that point, even if it was just a PC with a input box. You could get cheap ones, but the most obvious one was like Pro Tools and things like that. It was hard to get hold of and hard to use. So I was just practicing recording using this Portastudio, which was kind of like the way they used to do it, as they say, in the good old days, and it was more available method of recording. It wasn't great, it wasn't perfect. Cassettes aren't a great recording medium, or listening medium for that matter, but they were a way that people could record from home that they didn't otherwise have. Things were starting to change, GarageBand was coming out, things like that, but on the whole, people didn't have access to that kind of technology yet. So I made those demos. Then in 2016, after having recorded a couple of albums in studios, like professionally and stuff, I decided to record my own at home, and half of that album was recorded on a Tascam Portastudio in my apartment at the time. That was Good Morning Mr. Magpie, which is available on streaming if you want to listen to that. But half of that was recorded on tape, and then in 2021 I recorded Break the Wheel, all of which was entirely recorded and mixed on that same Tascam Portastudio. Since then, I've gone back to sort of recording on digital, using a digital interface, and my most recent album, Everyone Left, I recorded entirely in the box, as they say. I just used Logic Pro and I DI'd my guitar and this SM57, and that's how I recorded basically all of it, using a digital Arturia keyboard and making it that way. It wasn't the best experience. I'm not much for programming. I'm used to the good old days of just recording stuff live as a musician, so I was probably a little out of my depth doing that, but I think I did okay. Programming beats, synths, those sorts of things, not my forte. I'm used to just using instruments. So it was an experience. I'm still proud of it. I think it's good, but I wanted to do something different when I was next recording something. So my idea was to do something very acoustic and folky. So I started writing some songs in that vein. I was very inspired at the time by Crosby, Stills & Nash, Neil Young, a lot of the Beatles acoustic stuff, things like that, and wanted to do something more in that vein. So I started writing some of those material to then record. At the time, I didn't have access to the Portastudio, so the idea was I was probably just going to record it digitally and then, analogify it as people do these days. However, in the middle of that process, my mum died. It wasn't unexpected. She'd been unwell for quite some time. I'd been looking after her through the pandemic. And in 2025, start of 2025, she went into hospital. Then she went into hospice care, and from there, I live in the USA. She lives in the UK. So I was doing a lot of trips back and forth. When we got the news that was going to be it, I booked a flight as soon as I could, but missed it, unfortunately. But it meant I went home, and while I was waiting for the funeral, I basically had 2 weeks of nothing to do. And I was back at home, so I only had like half of my stuff. I took my laptop with me, and I took my lyric book very sensibly with me as well, but it didn't bring an interface. So I had my laptop, but nothing to record into it with. So I dug out the Portastudio. I was staying at Mum's, which was a strange experience because she wasn't there anymore, but I did have some of my stuff that I didn't ship to America when I moved. So a few of my instruments and the Portastudio were still there, so I was able to do some recording with that. I also had a load of tapes that I'd never used because I'd recorded stuff previously. I had about 10 tapes. So I had a recording medium. The only thing I didn't have was I had my SM57, but I didn't have a cable. So I needed a female XLR to a 1/4-inch jack, just so I could plug it into the Portastudio. And I started recording. So I'm going to explain how I recorded this in that time period, in a box room as well. And then I'll explain some of the myths I feel are being not promoted, but some myths that are swirling around the internet about the kind of Portastudio recording techniques and things like that. So I started recording, basically as soon as I got there, I dug out the Portastudio, got the tapes, bought the cable, and I dug out my acoustic guitar. I'd only written about 4 or 5 songs at the time, so if I wanted to make an album, I had to write some more. So I was writing as I was recording, which I actually find more rewarding when you have like an objective. There's a reason to make stuff. It sort of gives you the impetus, and you like the creative juices start flowing, as they say. So I was happier being able to like write stuff out. Also, pretty emotional time, so there was a reason for me to want to write things out, as it were. So I started writing, and mainly writing lyrics and melody first, and then trying to put the acoustic guitar to it after that. And so the setup was I was in a tiny box room, the room that I lived in as a teenager at my mum's house, but there was more stuff in it at this point. You know, the old classic of the spare room gets turned into a gym or whatever. This was more of a storage room, so there wasn't much space. So I had my mic stand set up on the square inch of floor space, and had the SM57 plugged in, just like this one, and I plugged that in, and I'm left-handed, so I had to have the mic over here against the wall. The door was just there, and I sat on the edge of the bed, and I had my acoustic guitar like this with the SM57 pointing it at that, and then right next to me on the bed I had the Portastudio. And so literally I could just press record and aim the SM57 at the body of the guitar. Now I've changed direction. Sometimes I pointed the mic at the bridge, sometimes at the sound hole, sometimes at the neck, and that created different sounds I needed. But basically I didn't record a click track. I didn't have a click track in my ear. I just recorded the acoustic guitar. It was sort of an internal rhythm thing. I just pressed record and played through the song start to finish on the acoustic, and just the acoustic with no vocals. That way it gave me sort of a bed. And I wasn't too concerned about the rhythm because I wasn't going to add too much after it. So I just recorded like off the cuff using the acoustic guitar. I did that for all of the songs, basically. I recorded all of the acoustic guitar across, I think, 4 tapes, maybe 5 tapes. And that was kind of the bedrock for everything I did thereafter. Again, I was still writing songs at the time. And then once I'd recorded the acoustic guitar, I just unplugged from input 1, plugged into input 2, and then recorded the vocals. So I recorded all of the vocals across all of the tracks. Again, I would just pick the take that I had. So I was recording 3 takes of each acoustic guitar track. If I didn't like one, I'd record over it, but I would give myself 3 takes to choose from. And so 3 takes I'd pick the best take and then I'd record the vocals on the best take that I had. So all of these were done in one. There was no punching in, there was no dropping in and editing or ducking or anything like that. It was just one take of the acoustic guitar, and if it didn't work, I either recorded over it or I did another take. Picked the best take, sang the vocals, again, all one take. If I didn't like it, I'd go back and start again, because this time I didn't have the opportunity to do multiple takes. I just did one take on track one all the way through. From there, I kind of considered it like the bulk of it actually done, because that was kind of the acoustic folky sound I wanted. And then the final 2 tracks on a 4-track, I was thinking, well, I can add creative stuff, which is what I did with Break the Wheel. With Break the Wheel, I had 2 tracks for the stereo piano and then the vocal over the top. But then I had a spare track to just add whatever I liked. And this time I had 2 spare tracks to add whatever I liked. So I started experimenting. I used an electric guitar for one. I did put like a digital beat onto one track. I did a secondary acoustic guitar on another. I tried lots of different things and none of them sounded right. But when there was one track I had that I wanted to put piano on. My first instrument is piano, I'm a piano player, and so I wanted to put some piano on one track, and one track only. So I went downstairs and took the Portastudio with me and went into the front room where my granddad's piano was. It's an older Baldwin acoustic piano that he bequeathed to my sister, but it's been at my mum's ever since. So that's the piano I learned on. That was the piano I practiced on all my teenage years. So that's a piano I know very well, and I wanted that on the record. So what I did was, where your feet are, where your knees are, just above the pedals, there's a panel that can pop out. The piano is actually called a spinet. It's a low level piano. It's underwound, it has shorter strings, and the piano strings cross underneath where your legs are. And if you pop the panel underneath, you can remove the panel. And basically I took the SM57 and aimed it sort of where my legs are, and if you aim it where the piano strings cross, you get a good mix of treble and bass sounds. So you can basically get a good mono sound from that. So you get a good mono mix of the piano, because again, this is 4-track, I didn't want to do stereo. And I just pressed record and then played along to the track. Again, all one take, no drop-ins, no ducking or anything like that. I just had to record it as is. Again, I've had practice at this. I've been recording with that Portastudio since the early 2000s. My early 20s, which gives you some indication of how old I am now, but I'm used to this technique of recording. So I would press record, have the mic aimed where the strings are underneath, and it gave it it's a very raw, very rustic, I suppose, sound is the word I'd use to describe it. It's not like slick and clear and you can hear the hammers or anything, but it's a really nice, it's a really rich sound that's full of ambience, which the acoustic guitar was as well. And it really, really matched well. 2 acoustic instruments, you kind of can't beat it, especially if you're miking them up, not DIing them. That sounded really good. And so I kind of went, all right, well, I'll try that with all the other tracks. So I did. I put piano on basically all but 2 of the other tracks I'd recorded with acoustic and vocals, and they sounded great. So I stuck with those takes basically. I recorded all the piano takes on top of the vocal and guitar takes, and I kind of felt like that was it. And that took me the 2 weeks up until the funeral, which was when my wife joined me. She couldn't get the time off, unfortunately, so she was but she was able to join me after 2 weeks, and it was very sad, very emotional, all that, but we had some time together while we were at Mum's house in the spare room. And so I played her the tapes and asked what she thought of them, and she was very generous. But she also said that, like, I asked her what they might be missing, what they might need, and one track I played her, she was like, oh, well, I feel like that could use some bass, it needs something underpinning it. I was like, okay, cool. And then I asked her about another track and she said the same thing, and then another track. So I basically quickly realized that this probably needed something underpinning it, some bass. So I dug out my bass, which is an Epiphone viola bass. You'll never guess who my favorite band are. I got that out and just DI'd that. I didn't mic it up, I just plugged that in straight in from the bass into the Tascam, and that was track 4. And I did that again. All but 2 of the tracks have bass on it. And that was all the recording done. The only other bit of recording I did was there was a rainstorm at one point. Well, it wasn't a storm. It rained. I was in England. It rained at one point. This is in middle of July. And the rain was pouring outside, so I had to stop recording because you could hear it. And we were just sat in the spare room, my wife and I, and the cat, actually, who also recently passed away. We were all sat in the room, and when the rain stopped, all the birds started singing. So I opened the window and I shoved the microphone out the window, basically, and pressed record, just to get some of that ambience. And yeah, I just left it recording for a couple of minutes. And I didn't really know what I was going to do with that, but that has ended up being, there's a track on the album that uses that. And it has a real sort of epoch in my mind now. It's very sort of a capturing of an instance. I'm very proud of it. And capturing it on tape as well made it really, I don't know, 3-dimensional. So that's on the track as well. But that was all the recording, basically. I didn't do anything other than that. Once I'd finished recording, I had to mix it. So the way I mixed it, I took I basically had my laptop. Now, it's an old iMac, which has a mini jack input, stereo mini jack input. And what I have is a stereo RCA cable, and you can stereo out of the Tascam. And then I plugged that directly into the laptop and opened Logic and basically started recording a stereo input. Basically, I'd start a Logic Pro session, and using that Logic Pro session, I just play the tape into that as a stereo mixdown. So that would basically record the master take. So what that meant was, and I did this for Break the Wheel as well, is if you press play on the tape, you basically have to mix live. So as you play the tape, you record it into Logic Pro. Then what you do is you basically ride the faders. There's no automation, obviously, it's just a Portastudio. So you can get the balance of the levels of each track right as it plays into the laptop. Sometimes it doesn't need you to ride the faders, you can just balance it first. But sometimes if you want to drop things out, bring things in, you have to do that live as the Logic Pro session records. As to like actual mixing and EQ, other than balance, you don't have a lot of options. So you just have, on each track, you have a bass and a treble setting. And I was using DBX for this. If you look on most Tascam Portastudios, there's a DBX switch, which basically reduces the hiss on tapes. So you can cut the hiss using that switch. Some people like it off, because they say it gives you more of a full frequency. I don't agree. I think it sounds terrible with the DBX off. It's really, really trebly and hissy. Yes, it kind of mutes a lot of the treble signal, but I found you can get away with that just by boosting the treble on the tracks themselves. So I kept the DBX on, and then when I was mixing, what I did was basically I scooped the low out of everything and then added more treble to every track. I had the bass for most things set at about 10 o'clock and the treble set at about 2. I tuned that to taste. You can kind of hear it where like suddenly the high frequencies come in, or where it gets too harsh. And so I just tuned that to taste, but generally it was about 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. 10 o'clock for the bass, 2 o'clock for the treble, except for the bass guitar. The bass I kind of left at midday and added a tiny bit of treble just so you could get the finger attack on that. But generally that I just left the EQ settings as they were and then got the balance right. The main thing you do when you're recording this sort of thing is you kind of have to mix with the arrangement. So if you're playing too much low end on the piano, you want to, or if you're playing too much low end on the guitar, play high end on the piano and vice versa. You don't want to muddy the mix that way. So arrangement's a good way of mixing your track first. So then once I'd set that, the EQ, I got the balance right, I basically hard panned the piano to the right and hard panned the acoustic guitar to the left and kept the bass and the vocal in the center. I did mix it in mono first, just so I could hear how it sounded, so everything was in balance, because sometimes a lot of, like, your phone will disregard stereo mixes because it comes out of one speaker, so you need to make sure you get things right in mono first. I always mix in mono first, but then I hard panned everything and it sounded infinitely better, sounded much more like how I wanted it to sound. And then basically you just press play on the tape, press record on the Logic Pro session, and then you just live mix it. So at the end of that, I had 12 tracks mixed down to a stereo mix, and that was that. We had to fly home. I'd recorded everything, that was the mix down. I left the Portastudio at home with the tapes, they're still there, and I had the mix downs with me. Now, the only problem was I also wanted backing vocals. I couldn't do the backing vocals on the tape cassettes because I'm not the best singer in the world and it would have required way too much time. So what I decided to do was when I got home, I basically opened the sessions up in Logic Pro and I recorded the vocals into them. This proved a problem because we live in this tiny apartment, my wife works from home, I work from home, there's not a lot of time and space for me to just start yelling in the middle of the apartment. So I had to snatch moments of silence essentially when I could, just like if my wife was out or gone to the shops or whatever, I would take 5 minutes to just try and do a harmony or two. So it took a long time, which is why I recorded it in 2025, but it didn't come out until earlier on this year. So I took the opportunities when I could to record those backing vocals, and basically what I did was I recorded a high harmony and a low harmony, which was kind of ended up being a 3-part harmony with the lead vocal, but I recorded both twice, which is the luxury of digital, you have endless tracks. So I did both harmonies twice, and then I hard panned both. I hard panned a high and a low to the left, a high and a low to the right, and then I could automate the mix regarding that. Now, how do you get that to mix in with a stereo mix of a cassette recording that is in the project? How do you get that to blend with it? Well, I used basically I used a summing stack of those 4 tracks. I created a summing stack and then applied a universal set of plugins to those 4 tracks altogether. And those were, I added gain, number 1. I always add gain if I'm recording digitally because digital needs a bit more of a boost. I've done it to this audio. So I added a bit of gain at the initial stage. Then I used the built-in Logic Pro console EQ. It's under, I think, Vintage. Yeah, I think it's under Vintage Console EQ or something like that. There's 3. There's the Valve EQ, the Console EQ, and the Graphic EQ. And the Console EQ is kind of it's kind of an SSL Neve kind of console EQ, which is kind of similar to a Portastudio. It's not. Portastudio is not an SSL desk, but it has the same frequencies. So I was able to use those frequency settings that are on that and get a rough approximation. So I scooped the low, boosted the high, gave you a very similar sound. Then from there, on top of that, I added a bit of compression. Again, I used the Logic Pro built-in compressor, and I even used a default patch, which is called Platinum Analog Tape, I think it is. The gain on that is way too high, so I turned that off, and then I tuned it to taste a little. Basically, it's a very subtle bit of compression that mimics the tape sound of compression, because tape naturally has a compressing factor because it limits a lot of the high and low bandwidth, so it naturally compresses. So to mimic that, I used a little bit of compression on those, which also kind of glues them together. You get that when you mix down on a Tascam Portastudio. If I was doing multiple takes and then mixing them down to a track, it does the same thing. So I was mixing these down essentially in the same way, and I used the compressor to try and like compress them in that way. And then on top of that, I used I think the company is called Klanghelm or Klangheim, I think. It's the IVG12, I think, which is free, or it used to be free on their website. It's the saturation part of their compressor that they allow you to download for free. I'll put a picture up on the screen. I use that for basically everything because a little bit of saturation goes a long way, not a lot. But basically what that does is it mimics the saturation you get from a Tascam or from a tape cassette, just in general, because if you push a tape a little hard, it will distort, particularly, again, the preamps on the Tascam. So to get that, just that little bit of bloom around everything, I added some saturation. And then from there, I exported the whole thing. So the stereo mix down of the tape original with the mix of the backing vocals, I exported that as a single stereo track and then imported that into another Logic session with all of the other tracks. I did that for all of the tracks again except 2, and then I used that Logic Pro session as like a mastering session. To master the tracks, so I did master it digitally, and I did do the backing vocals digitally, but everything else was done through the Tascam. To master it digitally, I did the same with Break the Wheel. I subscribe to what's called the Better school of mixing and mastering, which is balance, EQ, dynamics, ambience. I'd already done the balance. I couldn't do much more about the balance from there. So then it was just EQ, dynamics, and ambience. And you can overmaster things. A lot of stuff is overmastered in my opinion today. So I didn't want to overcook it because I wanted to have that nice organic sound that some people refer to like tape as, but I wanted to kind of retain that analog sound. So I didn't add too much. For EQ, again, I think I'm pretty sure I just used the built-in digital EQ, like the linear, I think it's the linear phase EQ. Yeah, the linear phase EQ that Logic Pro has was just what I used because I didn't want it to go out of phase because it was already stereo mixed. So I used the linear phase EQ and basically just scooped some of the unwanted frequencies out. I didn't do a lot of EQing. You can get a lot of low mids, particularly with analog and with acoustic. So I scooped some of that out, added again a bit more treble, just to tame the lows and bring back some of the high-end information. Didn't really do much to that. I don't think I added anything else. I may have added another console EQ just for the flavor. I don't think I even really added much EQ to it. Maybe just a sort of a textural EQ, but that was all I did. Then from there, once I'd done the EQ, then I added dynamics, which again, I literally just used the built-in Logic Pro compressor and did a slight tiny bit of compression, which gluing compression, but also to tame those highs. I wanted it to be dynamic, I didn't want it to be squashed, but you also kind of do need to rein in some frequencies, and the compression helps do that. So just a smidgen of compression, really not a lot at all. And then after that, I added ambience. Now, I didn't use any pedals or outboard or anything for the recording and mixing of the album. There is no reverb on my vocals, there's no delay or distortion or anything. Everything is acoustic, everything is straight into the Portastudio. I didn't add anything. The only bit of that I added was at the mastering stage, because you do notice it. I could have kept it raw, like I could have kept it without any ambience whatsoever, but you notice it and it's a little harsh, it's a little too intense. So for every track I added the Universal Audio plate reverb. The plate reverb is free, or it was when I got it. I think they do deals occasionally. I just downloaded it. Again, I don't have a pro setup. I just used the Universal Audio plate thing that was free, and I used it just a hair. The blend was way down, below 1. I really didn't want to add much, but you just need to add a little bit of breathing room to those mixes. And I did that for all but one track. And the one track I didn't use that on was a song called All the Same Dream. Instead, for that one, I used a master delay. I used, again, built-in Logic Pro. It's under amps and pedals. You go to the pedal board and they have a mimic, a sort of a clone of the Memory Man, the EHX Memory Man pedal, which is an analog delay pedal. And I used that as the master delay. I set it to a long trail, quite short delay, but with a long trail. And again, set it way back. I added a load of low cut because I didn't want low end to have delay on it. But I basically used that as a master delay, which pokes through when you hear certain high notes and things. But I didn't add any reverb to that. I just added delay. Everything else, I added that UA plate reverb to it, which just gives everything a little bit of space, and also again glues things together, makes everything sound like it was done at the same time. It does add a bit of digital sheen to it, but it's either that or you have that slightly overbearing analog directness, which can work for some things. I think for punk and trashier stuff, that really works. I love that sound, but for this, I didn't want it to be quite so intense and against the ear, I think is the way they say. So I added that bit of ambience. From there, it was just another export. I realize I'm degrading every time you export it, but I tried to keep everything at as higher, I think 24-bit, whatever the bit rate or whatever. I had a high bit rate when I was recording it. I don't really pay attention to that because, quite frankly, nobody notices. Most people are listening to this through a Bluetooth speaker or Bluetooth headphones or not particularly professional audio equipment. You're not actually going to notice that much of a degradation in audio quality. And not only that, the distributor I use only accepts up to 16-bit. I don't think they even accept 24-bit. Maybe they do. I don't remember. Anyway, I exported it from there as master files individually. I added some sound effects. I topped and tailed the tracks and things like that. Sent it through. From there, I also, while I was back in the UK, kicking my heels, I took a walk one evening, in fact, with an old camera I found in the loft, and I bought myself a roll of colour film and walked out of town up the hill and took some photos, which I'll put on screen now, and those ended up being the album cover and the interior shots and things like that. It was lots of nature, lots of sort of stuff that I felt reflected the themes of the album. It's called After the Harvest after all, and yeah, I ended up getting some really good, well, some very evocative photographs anyway, and used them for the liner photos and things like that, and the album cover and the rear cover as well. That's how I made it. It's available to purchase on Elastic Stage as either vinyl or CD. You can also purchase it from leocookman.bandcamp.com as a digital download. And it's available now. It will eventually become available on streaming, but I also I'm a little done with streaming. I've taken all my music off Spotify because F Spotify, but it will eventually be available on streaming. So that's how I did it. And with that in mind, I kind of want to dispel two key myths. The first myth about recording anything analog, but particularly Portastudios, because they're really, like I say, they're having a moment because of the McG thing, and a lot of YouTubers are talking about them, and they are so overpriced. You can buy them on eBay and they are way overpriced at the moment. So the first thing is, gear doesn't matter. And I know that is antithetical to everything on YouTube, and that's kind of why I wanted to make this video. It doesn't matter how you recorded it. I recorded this on Tascam Portastudio, true, because I had to. I didn't have a digital interface to access to. If I did, I may have done things differently, I may have recorded extra stuff. Use what you have available to you. I would far prefer, I think everyone would far prefer, if you just made the thing you want to make with what you have available to you, rather than waiting for the magic fairy dust of a vintage Strat or a classic analog outboard gear or anything like that. It doesn't matter the gear you use to record something, just record it. Are there benefits to using Portastudio? Absolutely. You get that lovely tape warmth. You get that lovely, there's a reason McG and JHS are recording these. You get a direct input sound that's really nice and has that real classic analog warmth to it. The preamp on those Tascams is really, has an interesting set of frequencies that it boosts, and it sounds really nice. And the EQ is tuned a specific way, and it tames certain frequencies, and you get that lovely bit of distortion. So it can make things sound a very specific way if that's the sound you want. It might not be the sound you want, and particularly for doing certain genres of music, it makes things so complicated, having to bounce things down, having to do all these sorts of things. I used just 4 tracks. I didn't bounce anything down because it would have degraded the quality. I didn't want it to sound like that. If you bounce things down, it starts sounding really rough. Maybe I could have bounced things digitally and then bounced them back, but again, all of this was sort of losing the impetus of making something acoustic and quick. That's great. You can also do that with a digital interface. I've just explained how you can make something that is digital blend perfectly with an analog tape sound. I did all the backing vocals digitally, and then I made them fit using built-in VSTs, built-in sound and built-in EQ that you have access to. I'm sure it's the same with Ableton, I'm sure it's the same with any of these digital audio workspaces. There'll be a way of making things, just if you know what you're listening for, you can make things sound how you want them to sound. It's not about the Tascam Portastudio. It really isn't. They do have a sound, but it's the same as having a pedal. It's the same as using a specific guitar. It's not about the gear, and I really can't stress that enough. I've now made 3 albums using a Portastudio in either entirely or in part, and I like the workflow of it. That's definitely true. I much prefer just being able to plug something in and press record. I love being able to just like run away with like whatever idea I have. I love being able to just strum an acoustic guitar, press record, and as soon as I've got an idea, press record and do it. But you can do that with digital as well. And the restrictions allow you like less options, so you don't get option paralysis. That's great, but it's not the be all and end all. So the first myth I really want to get away from is if you want things to have a nice warm analog sound, you can do that digitally. If you want to strip things back and you just want to make things acoustic, you can record that digitally. If you want something to be simpler and more plain, you can do that digitally. I didn't, because I didn't have access to it at the time and I wanted to record something. I needed something to distract me at the time. But I just really want to sort of dispel the myth that it's the gear that makes the sound. It isn't. It's you that makes the sound. It's your band that makes the sound. It's your choices that make the sound. Don't buy into, oh, you need this pedal, you need this piece of equipment. You don't need a Portastudio. They are so overpriced. Just use what you have available to you. That's myth number 1. Myth number 2, you don't need to wait for a tragedy to make an album. There's a set of myths, I feel, around this idea that you need to wait for this perfect moment, or that like most great albums are recorded in high extreme circumstances where it's like there's either tensions are high, like Rumours by Fleetwood Mac was recorded in an intense time, and like you need divisions within the band to make things sound good, or you need to run away to a cabin in the woods to really get in your feels about things. No, you don't. I love Forever Ago. I think it's a great album. It's one of the only ones by Bon Iver I like, to be honest. It's a fantastic album, and I've read umpteen articles about people saying, yeah, he had to take himself away to the woods and he had to hunt elk to feed himself. And yeah, great. If your dad owns a cabin, which is what this situation was, it wasn't like he just built a cabin in the woods. And like, no, he went to a cabin that was owned by his family. And if you have access to, it's the same with Tame Impala. He went away and recorded that famous album he made in like some house by the beach or something, or in the mountains. Great. If you can afford that, awesome. If you can afford to go to Abbey Road, awesome. You will get fantastic results that way. You will get fantastic results using a cup and a piece of string. You will get a good album if you mean it. If you want to record something, record it on your phone. There's a huge movement in Saharan Africa. Saharan guitar is a big part of like where I think the innovation of electric guitar is happening at the moment, and it's because they are recording things with passion and new ideas, and they're recording it on their phones. They're recording it on whatever they have access to, and yeah, that might mean a Portastudio, that might mean a digital thing, whatever. But it's not the. Don't mythologize the way in which you record something. There's a great phrase I love that might have been by Picasso, I don't know. I can't cite my sources on this one. But the quote is, "Inspiration will strike, but it must find you working." And that's the key. Don't go away to the woods because you think that'll inspire you. Don't wait for a death in the family and to be stuck in a box room in your childhood home because you think that'll let your creative juices flow. Yes, they probably will, but they will also flow any other time. If you're actually working at what you want to record, your music, your art, whatever it is you want to make, it's better that you just start working rather than you wait for the perfect circumstances to come along to make them. Just make stuff. I am making this video with my iPhone on a board game box and a book. I had to rearrange the furniture in our little flat so I could get the right angle so I wasn't facing like a cupboard or something, or my towels. So you make what you can with what you have, and don't mythologize it, just make the thing. And second, don't worry about what gear you have. The best guitar you have is the one you have in your hands. It is not the gear and it is not the circumstances, it's you that makes the thing important. So for all the people who are saying, oh yeah, you've got to get a Portastudio to get that analog sound, or you've got to get that Pultec EQ, you've got to get that SSL, you've got to get that vintage Stratocaster. No, you don't. You just need an idea. You need to have creative impetus. Inspiration will strike, it must find you working. That's all I wanted to say. I realize this is probably a long video, but I just wanted to kind of dispel a few of these myths and publicize my album, After the Harvest, which is available now, CD, vinyl, and digital download. You can get that from Bandcamp or Elastic Stage. My name's Leo Cookman. Thank you for listening, and keep making music, please.